This is Dr. David Schein, and welcome to Business Law 101. One of the very significant cases is Kelo. Kelo is significant because the United States is a country of private property. We get to own our home and our cars and our investments. They belong to us. They do not belong to the government. And so if the government steps in and takes something that belongs to us, it's a big deal. So the question came up in Kelo is whether the state can take private property and what are the circumstances. And unfortunately, the Supreme Court ruled, and by the way, if you're interested, there's a article here that you can link to right off the PowerPoint slide. We're not going to do that today, but it's only 48 seconds. I think that's 48 seconds. I don't think it's 48 minutes. But in any event, this is something that will give you some information about this important case. But to my surprise, the Supreme Court pretty much said, well, if there's just a public purpose, we don't mind if the state takes private property and gives it to others. And rather than, so in other words, the issue of taking private property to put a highway through an area is pretty well respected. You know, for the greater good of all, one or two parties suffers because we took their land or we divided their land to make a bigger freeway. That's pretty well accepted. But what wasn't accepted is this following scenario. Suppose that you're a small business owner in Baltimore, and you have an old seafood restaurant down by the waterfront in downtown Baltimore, their harborfront area. And the state comes along and says, well, there's a big company here called Rouse, R-O-U-S-E, and they've proposed $1 billion investment. They're going to take all of the real estate around the harbor. They're going to level all of the stuff that's presently there, a hodgepodge of different buildings, and we're going to put this massive development in place, and it's going to dramatically raise our tax revenue. People are going to like it because it's going to be fancy, and they're going to feel safe, and it's going to be well lighted, and da-da-da-da-da. But suppose you're that small business owner, and you say, you know what? If you give me a few $1,000 or a couple $100,000 for my beat up restaurant where I'm making a good living, I cannot afford to buy back into the new development. Rouse Company will charge me too much rent to have the same amount of square footage that I have today. And the couple $100,000 I'm going to get from my beat up old restaurant is not going to allow me to build a restaurant in another area that's close to this development. Plus, because of the increase in property values, I will be required to pay more real estate tax. So the individual owners went forward to the Supreme Court and said, we should not be penalized in this fashion. We understand highways and public buildings, but we don't understand taking private property, laundering it through the government, and giving it to another private developer. And this is happening all over the United States. And so, but the Supreme Court sided with the public developments and said, no, you can do it as long as the ultimate purpose is a public purpose. And they said it's up to the localities and the states to decide what that public purpose is. So it's a very important case. Now, about half the states have passed anti-Kelo legislation that says that they are very limiting, are very inclined to limit taking private property to give to some other private entity. Still happens even in those states, however. So again, a very significant case.